The hypothalamus is a tiny structure located at the base of the brain, below the thalamus, above the optic chiasm and the pituitary gland. It's a symmetric structure with one half on each side of the brain, separated by the third ventricle. The hypothalamus is the major control center of the autonomic nervous system and endocrine system. It also plays an essential role in regulation of homeostatic processes, such as body temperature, food and water intake, and sleep-wake cycle. It receives various internal and external inputs, integrates them to assess the body's state, then outputs appropriate responses to maintain basic life functions. The blood-brain barrier that surrounds the hypothalamus is leaky, allowing it to pick up hormonal and nutritional signals from the circulation, as well as other information such as blood osmolarity and internal temperature. Other inputs to the hypothalamus include somatic sensory information, such as pain or external temperature, via the spinothalamic tract, visceral sensory information, such as heart rate or hunger, conveyed by the vagus nerve and relayed by the nucleus solitarius in the brainstem, light information from the retina via the retinohypothalamic tract, and neural connections to and from other parts of the limbic system, as well as the cerebral cortex. Among the many hypothalamic outputs, best understood are the ones that regulate the autonomic and endocrine systems. The hypothalamus controls the autonomic nervous system via the so-called pre-autonomic neurons that directly innervate parasympathetic and sympathetic preganglionic neurons, as well as various nuclei in the brainstem. Different pre-autonomic neurons project to different levels of the spinal cord, allowing independent control of subsets of sympathetic fibers. The hypothalamus regulates the endocrine system in three ways. First, several hypothalamic hormones act on the anterior pituitary to control the release of pituitary hormones. Pituitary hormones, in turn, regulate the production of yet other hormones by other endocrine glands. Second, neurons in the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei produce oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone, which are released via the posterior pituitary. The third pathway is by autonomic innervation of endocrine glands. For example, sympathetic stimulation of the adrenal gland results in production of adrenaline. Other hypothalamic outputs include somatic involuntary motor behaviors related to homeostasis, such as shivering, and reciprocal connections to the limbic system and the cortex to regulate alertness, emotions, and encourage motivated behaviors that are essential for survival. Homeostatic processes are typically regulated by feedback loops. For example, the hypothalamus modulates water intake by monitoring blood osmolality via osmoreceptors. When an increase in blood osmolarity is perceived, it triggers thirst sensation to encourage water-seeking behavior and releases antidiuretic hormone to reduce water loss in urine. Another example is the regulation of body temperature, where the hypothalamus acts like a thermostat. When the body is too hot, the hypothalamus sends instructions for it to cool down, for example, by stimulating sympathetic fibers that innervate sweat glands to produce sweat. On the other hand, when temperature drops, the hypothalamus directs the body to preserve and produce heat, mainly via the release of norepinephrine. Norepinephrine increases heat production in brown adipose tissue and induces vasoconstriction to reduce heat loss. In addition, somatic outputs cause muscles to shiver, converting stored energy into heat. Note that different groups of sympathetic fibers are activated selectively in the two scenarios to produce opposite outcomes. For more complex processes, feedback loops alone may not be sufficient. Instead, antagonistic circuits with opposing functions are often in place, and the regulation typically involves multiple nuclei, both within and outside the hypothalamus. Examples include sleep-promoting and wake-promoting regions for control of sleep-wake cycle, and appetite-stimulating and appetite-suppressing neurons for regulation of feeding behaviors.
Are you a fan of Alila Medical videos? If so, you will love our new Alila Academy. Based entirely on our highly effective animated mini lectures, our courses are designed to follow a typical syllabus in each subject. Each topic is extensively illustrated and comes with quizzes to test your understanding, downloadable PDFs for a quick review, as well as images for you to use in school projects or presentations. We are known for producing highly effective animated videos that explain the most difficult concepts in record time. We have no doubt that our courses will be a lifesaver for both students and teachers alike, so do come check them out. Alila Academy. Clear, concise, effective, with extensive visual resource. No one explains like Alila does.